Introduction. First and foremost, I want to thank you for downloading the book, How to Raise an Adult in Today's Modern World. Positive Parenting to Build Confidence and Discipline for the Little One You Love and Care About. In this book, you will learn how to bring out the best in your children, how to help them to learn to think for themselves and have the confidence to stand up and be counted as an individual. Whether you have young children, teenagers or even grandchildren, it is never too late to teach them these invaluable life skills. This book includes tried and tested methods to parent your children in a productive and positive way. It does not focus on the premise that the only way to achieve success and happiness in life is through school, college, and qualifications, although they are important aspects, but academic skills are simply another string to your child's bow. To reach their full potential, a child must also learn to develop personal characteristics that will enable them to become a fully rounded human being who can play an important part in their home, work, and social environments. With the help of this book, you will learn how to develop your children's self-confidence, teach them to think for themselves and become an adult you will be proud to call your son or daughter. Thanks again for downloading this book. I hope you enjoy it, and please leave a review once you are finished. The Parents of Yesterday. So what does it take to be the parent of a well-adjusted young adult? Is the person your child becomes when they reach adulthood down to simple genetics, or do we, as parents, play a vital role in their moral, emotional, and mental development? The nature/nurture debate has been raging for decades with no definitive conclusion being reached. So in this chapter we will be looking at the parenting techniques applied from the 1940s through to the 1970s and the subsequent results, and comparing it to the differences in modern-day parenting. There were many aspects of childhood life in the war and post-war era that were clearly inappropriate for childhood development. Physical discipline, child labor, and the belief that children should be seen and not heard are not productive ways to promote psychological well-being. That being said, one thing is certain: children from that era grew up having learnt respect for their elders and each other, strong family values, a solid work ethic, and a well-balanced moral compass. All excellent traits we would be proud to recognize in our own children, but some, if not all of them, are sadly missing in the majority of today's young adults. So what exactly did the parents of yesteryear do differently to bring out these traits, and how did we lose these parenting skills? During the 1940s and early 1950s, parenting was approached with a strict authoritarian view. The theme of parents being in sole control of everything their offspring did was simply the norm. The children were allowed to play and be children, but all had strict boundaries that they were expected to live within. Chores for all children, from the youngest to the oldest, were part of everyday life, and the child was aware that severe punishment would be the result of any disobedience or wrongdoing. And this carried through to their adult lives. At some point in our lives, most of us will have heard the words, "You are not too old to have your backside slapped." Children born during this period did not question their parents. They simply accepted that a mom or dad's word was law, and that as a child they did not have a voice. While the adults that resulted from this upbringing had all the good qualities previously mentioned, they did lack in many others. Few adults had the ability to question life itself, and as such became rigid in their opinions, unable to move forward and stretch themselves. They were conditioned to how life should be and lived their adult lives within a strict set of guidelines that had been laid out for them by their parents. As the memories of war moved into the background, society moved forward and became much more open in its thinking. These adults were faced with the choice of learning to adapt or sticking rigidly with what they knew and subsequently fighting against an increasingly free-thinking society. This growing freedom of thought and expression brought about a new approach to parenting techniques. From the late 50s onwards, parents became almost negligent in their children's upbringing. This is not to say the children were neglected. They were fed, clothed and loved as before. The neglect came from a lack of responsibility towards a child's behavior. The authoritarian approach changed to encourage the children to think for themselves and express themselves in whatever way they felt inclined to. There was a lack of inhibition and very little guidance. During this time, it was expected that children would make mistakes throughout their childhood and that they would learn from them. Along with this free thinking went a lack of discipline. Children were still punished physically when they displeased their parents, but due to a lack of boundaries, this punishment was rarely for any wrongdoing. More often it was the result of getting caught and having that wrongdoing brought to the parents' door. Many of the adults arising from this style of upbringing found they struggled with adult life and had difficulties fitting in with society. They were given no rules to live by and were rarely taught about behavior and its effects on others, which resulted in a flood of adults who had been, and still were, either bullies or victims. These confused adults were the parents of future generations. In modern-day society we have a strict set of rules regarding what is and what is not acceptable in parenting, which leaves us wondering exactly what we should be doing when raising our children. So often our natural instincts are curbed because a little voice in our head tells us that what we want to do is not politically correct. We spend so much time fearing the judgment of others that we are left confused about what is right and what is wrong. Children today are not only aware of this weakness, they actively manipulate it, which leaves parents with little or no control. Later in this book I will be outlining techniques to overcome these problems, but for now I will leave you with this thought. So long as you are not physically or mentally abusing your child, you should ignore that voice in your head and follow your instincts. Because everyone you think may be judging you is going through exactly the same thought process as you are. Parenting techniques. In recent years, there has been a steady stream of theories about the correct way to be a parent. In a similar way to the plethora of fad diets that crop up with increasing regularity, new labels are being given to parenting regimes which all claim to be the answer to every parent's prayers. In reality, every one of them has the potential to both aid and damage your child's progress. This is not because they may or may not be well thought out and researched theories. It is simply because their concepts approach children as a whole. In truth, every child is a little person who has a brain that works just like ours does, a personality all of their own and a purpose in life they have yet to decide. Our job as parents is to guide and protect them on their journey to adulthood, not to dictate their thoughts and actions. In this chapter, I will be outlining a few of these parenting techniques to help you better understand them so you can make an informed choice about whether or not you feel they would work for your child. Helicopter parenting. A helicopter parent lives their child's life along with them, rather than beside them. They want and expect access to every facet of their children's thoughts and actions. This is not about bonding with their child, but about being overprotective. As the child grows, the parents keep up a constant stream of contact, through phone calls, texts and face-to-face conversation. They aim to know everything about their children, from the important issues through to the most banal, such as what they have eaten and when. It is about foreseeing harm and preventing or lessening it before it happens. While preventing harm for your child is something all parents would like to do, the stringent approach of a helicopter parent can, at the least, leave the child with a lack of independent thought. This alone can cause problems for the youngster with friends, and later in life with spouses. The parent will sort out any disagreements with friends, sibling, and teachers straight away. This will leave the child no opportunity to develop any skill in conflict resolution. This may make life simpler for the child while they are very young, but as a teenager and adult they will be afraid of conflict and shy away from doing or saying anything that may cause a negative reaction from someone. They will still be mentally reliant on the parent because an important set of social skills has not been learnt. In some cases, this style of parenting can result in the parent and child developing a very close bond, but it can have a reverse effect. As the child grows into a teenager, this parental protectiveness is often interpreted as being oppressive and can lead them to rebel against what they see as interference and control by the parent. While rebelling against authority is almost a rite of passage for most teenagers, for the child of a helicopter parent it can be disastrous because the youth has never been taught how to rely on their own judgment. Attachment parenting. This type of parenting starts from birth and involves a close physical and emotional attachment between baby and parent, most commonly the mother. It is all about bonding and is based on keeping the child close to the mother at all times. Attachment parenting promotes breastfeeding and body contact, which is of proven benefit to the child. It also involves the child dictating sleeping and eating patterns above routine. It is a warm and relaxed approach to parenting with nonviolent punishments, both physical and verbal. In place of shouting and anger, the child is punished by timeouts and loss of privileges suitable to their age range. Children are also rewarded for good behavior. It is on this basis that children are taught right from wrong. While the attachment approach sounds ideal and can provide a calm and loving environment, it is not without its problems, though primarily it is the parent, not the child, who will feel the negative effects. A mother who uses the attachment technique is often plagued with guilt and they are required to leave their child with others for any period of time. Whether or not this is due to work or some other unavoidable commitment is irrelevant. If this is an occasional problem, there are rarely any long-term detrimental effects, but if it is a long-term arrangement such as holding down a job, this can cause anxiety issues for the mother. It is unavoidable that long-term parental anxiety will cause problems within the household. For a couple, this technique can have serious implications. It is not only physically and mentally draining, but it is time-consuming and leaves little energy or time left over for the parents to spend quality time together as a couple. As a father is incapable of breastfeeding, it is the mother who spends most of her time with the baby, which can lead to resentment. The father wants to spend time alone with both the baby and the mother, but they have become a single entity. Where one goes, the other is sure to follow. Attachment parenting often includes sharing your bed with the baby or child, with the result being little or no intimacy between the parents. This scenario lessens the bonds between many couples that find they start to drift apart as the child grows. This paints a bleak picture for families who adopt the attachment technique, but it is not all doom and gloom. If the parents are fully aware of all the issues it can raise before the child is born, and go into it 100% committed to the process and its consequences, they can have a contingency plan in place so they are able to resolve any problems before they take root. Bulldozer parenting. This strategy takes helicopter parenting to a whole new level. Whereas a helicopter parent will try to prevent a situation if one should occur, a bulldozer parent would quite simply eliminate the possibility of any problem to arise at all. The ideal for a bulldozer parent is that their child will never have to deal with anything unpleasant. For example, if a child's grades mean they are not guaranteed a place at a particular college, then instead of encouraging them to apply with the possibility in mind that they may still get in, a bulldozer parent will not allow the child an opportunity to apply to save them from possible rejection. By the same principle, if their child is struggling to read a particular book, then the book would be removed and replaced with one they can easily read. The result is that children raised by the bulldozer technique assume everything in life will be handed to them on a plate. When they discover this isn't the case in adult life, they are ill-equipped to deal with it and become anxious and withdrawn. They have a complete inability to cope with the stresses of everyday life, and as they have never made a real decision for themselves in all their childhood years, they do not grasp the concept well. Instead, they develop an overwhelming feeling of inadequacy and low self-confidence. Tiger parenting. This technique employs a very old-school approach to raising children. The parents have strict rules which must be adhered to and employ harsh punishments. It is all about doing exactly as you are told and encompasses everything from scholastic accomplishment to perfect behavior. A tiger parent rules with strength and dominance, and they hold firm to the belief that they know best for the child. It is irrelevant to them what the child wants out of life, and they believe this control will lead to their child's unwavering respect and admiration for them. In reality, they mistake the child's attitude towards them as respect they have earned, when it is usually plain and simple fear that keeps the child compliant. This approach stifles creativity in children, and it is common for the children of tiger parents to suffer from low self-esteem and stress-related problems when they reach adulthood. They are afraid to speak their mind and become compliant in both their work life and personal relationships. Free-range parenting. The premise of free-range parenting is to allow a child to make mistakes in order for them to learn. The children are given a lot of freedom from supervision and are allowed to do things like go to the park without their parents, travel to and from school with their friends or alone, and use public transport. This style of parenting allows the child to develop at their own pace, to learn their limitations and discover how to overcome obstacles. They become self-reliant and can think independently. Free-range parents are supportive and understanding of their child's needs, but there is a danger that the child can be given too much freedom. To use this technique effectively, the parent must always take care to ensure their children are educated well about dangers they may have to face, so the child is capable of making informed decisions about what he or she chooses to do. A lack of knowledge about the world in general and basic safety precautions can result in the child finding themselves in situations they are ill-equipped to deal with. The primary objections raised with regard to free-range parenting is that the freedom a child is given is not age-appropriate and that they should be treated as children, not adults. Positive parenting. There are four main concepts to observe when it comes to raising positive, self-confident and compassionate adults. These are ongoing processes throughout childhood and can be used to instill all the necessary virtues every parent hopes to teach their children. Communication. Routine. Boundaries. Independence. Communication. No matter how your child is feeling, what they may have done or how embarrassed they may feel, a child should always feel they are able to approach a parent without fear and talk about anything that is on their mind. Communication is a key element when raising a child. It is the easiest thing to do but is often the most neglected area of childcare. Modern-day life doesn't give us a lot of free time, and parents who are working alongside raising children often feel like there is even less time to relax, never mind finding time to sit and have a conversation. As a child gets older, they become more involved in pursuing their own interests. This makes it even easier for the parent to use what little downtime they have to switch off and relax. It is important that the parent takes this time to recharge their batteries, but by setting aside 15 to 30 minutes of that time each day to chat with their children, they can save themselves a lot of problems when their child reaches the teenage years. This time will become a natural part of your child's daily routine, and they are less likely to become resentful of questions about their lives as they get older. Sustaining this relaxed channel of communication throughout their early formative years will make it much easier for them to approach you when they do encounter a problem in their lives. This process will also facilitate a parent should they need to broach a sensitive and potentially explosive subject with their children. If possible, try to give each child a full hour to itself once a week for quality time. This can be anything from watching a movie to playing a game, or even just going for a walk. During this hour, keep your attention focused entirely on that child and what they want to do, to the exclusion of all else, except emergencies. By doing this, you will further strengthen the child's belief that they can approach you with issues that are worrying them, and you are giving them a window of opportunity to do this privately. A child's mind is like a sponge, and they will soak up everything around them, but, unfortunately, they do not possess the necessary emotional ability and sense of reasoning to make sense of all of it. When a child asks a question, no matter how obscure it may be, it is their way of trying to understand something. Stress is not restricted to just adults, and, in the same way an adult's mind does, the child's mind can become overloaded, leading to confusion and ultimately, stress. As adults, we understand stress, but a child simply feels confused and overwhelmed, which leads them to act out, throw tantrums and become tearful or withdrawn. As a society, we naturally avoid answering questions about subjects that we believe the child is too young to discuss. The trick here is to always give an answer, but ensure it is age-appropriate and containing only as much information as absolutely necessary. A refusal to answer leads the child to try to make sense of something on its own. With their limited life experience, this invariably leads to a negative conclusion. Scenario: Dad arrives home from a stressful day at work and is taking his bad mood out on those around him. The child overhears their parents arguing and asks Dad why Mummy was shouting at him. Response to a 3-year-old child: Because Daddy was cheeky to Mummy, but she told me off and I said sorry, so she is not angry anymore. By answering the child's question, the parent has recognized that the child is concerned and has answered in such a way that the situation has been understood. This has offered reassurance that Mum and Dad are okay. They also see the concept of acknowledging and apologizing for bad behavior being played out by the parent. It is irrelevant that the argument wasn't about Dad being cheeky as such. What is important is the fact the father gave a full answer to the question, but in a way a 3-year-old child could relate to. If the same scenario were based on an 8-year-old child, then the answer would require more detail. Not only has the 8-year-old got a better developed sense of reasoning, but also they are more astute due to the additional 5 years of life experience. In this case, the answer would be along the lines of, I had a hard day at work, so I feel very tired because I haven't had a chance to relax yet. This made me bad-tempered and I took it out on Mum. It's okay though, because she told me off and I realized I was behaving badly, so I said sorry. The end result is the same as it was for the 3-year-old, but by giving a more detailed account of the situation, the older child had enough information to process it and accept it. Routine. When developing routines, it is vital that they are consistent and sustained while allowing for some level of flexibility. Rigid routine can become overpowering and restrictive. Finding the balance can be difficult, but once it is established it will become normal practice. On average it takes around 3 weeks of a regular pattern of activity to form as a habit. If the routine is too loose it will never become habitual. However, a strict routine incurs too high a level of constraint. In the long term this often leads to the child rebelling against it. Limit routine to things like meals, bedtime, playtime, hygiene and homework. Mealtime. Meals need structure while maintaining flexibility. Breakfast is the first thing you eat when you wake up, and you must have eaten before you leave the house. The time you eat is not an issue so long as it is within a couple of hours of waking, with the exception of school days when the available time frame is shorter. The important issue of putting fuel into the body before you start your day's activities is what you are achieving here. Lunch times are within a time frame of an hour or two rather than a rigid time being set. This is a relaxed midday meal and will run alongside any school or work routine. Dinner is always within an hour time frame because it has to accommodate for school, work, and bedtimes. Supper is a light snack between dinner and bedtime, so the allotted time is within a 30-minute period and includes a specific amount of food. The reason for the rigidity of this is so the child recognizes that this isn't a vital meal and they will only need a small amount. Bedtime. Bedtime should be quite rigid when the child is young, but this can be loosened up slightly as the child becomes older. In order to function fully during the daytime, the body must receive a good quality of sleep. Regular bedtimes have 2 benefits, aside of giving the body rest. Firstly, they train the mind to sleep, not at a specific time as such, although regular sleep patterns will emerge from bedtime routine. But they teach the mind that when it gets into bed that is a time to switch off and rest. This development can be aided by a full bedtime routine. Work out what your child needs to do before they get into bed. Have a drink, brush their teeth, use the toilet, wash their face and hands, then say goodnight to the rest of the family. A quiet time is also beneficial as it allows the child to recognize that this is the time wind down for bed. Usually, 30 minutes before the bedtime is sufficient. Start the routine with explaining that it is time for bed very soon and give them a small drink and supper. Reading a book is an ideal bedtime preparation because it takes the focus away from everyday events. If you have other children, you can get the child settled in bed and complete the routine there so they are not distracted by television or conversation. Depending on the age and ability of the child, you may have to read the book to them. 10 minutes before bedtime, ask the child to brush their teeth, use the toilet and wash their hands and face. Again, you may need to assist with this. Send the child to say goodnight to the rest of the family and tuck them into bed. At various stages throughout a child's development, they will test the boundaries when it comes to staying in bed. Very calmly take them back to their room, tuck them in and say goodnight again. A child strives for attention, and when they test your boundaries, they are looking for that attention. Even getting angry with them is focusing your attention on them, and a child will accept negative attention over no attention every time. The second benefit of having a bedtime routine is connected to behavior. The UK Millennium Cohort study carried out by University College London has shown that irregular bedtime routines lead to erratic behavior in children. The study also found that continued disruption in sleep patterns will cause the child's behavior to become progressively worse over the years. In addition to the behavioral problems, they may develop hyperactivity, social problems, and emotional difficulties. While it may take a short while to instill this routine in the child, especially if it has not been done from a young age, it is always possible to introduce it. Once a regular pattern of sleep is established, you should find some improvement in your child's behavior. On average, a school-age child requires around 10 hours of sleep each night. Hygiene. While hygiene is a subject that needs little explanation, a routine should be established. Basic things such as showers or bath times, morning and evening teeth brushing and toilet hygiene all benefit from structure. While this is easy to accomplish with a young child, if the routine isn't in place, it will not take long for these things to be forgotten as your child gets older. Tasks such as brushing teeth before bed are essential for longevity of teeth and prevention of gum disease, yet for many children this is the first place they will slip in their hygiene. It is important to incorporate the regular supervision of routines when an older child begins to become complacent in any aspect of hygiene. In addition to personal hygiene, food hygiene is also an important issue. Using a clean knife and fork, clean cups, washing hands before meals, and education regarding what is safe to eat and what isn't, such as not eating food from the floor. These are lessons that will help keep your child in good health. Homework. The older your children get, the less enthusiastic the majority of them will become when it comes to education. At the end of a school day, the last thing a child wants to do is more schoolwork. Start a homework routine as young as possible to help it become something they habitually do. This will make it more difficult to ignore doing it as they get older. Many parents believe that doing homework straight after school finishes is the most effective time. With some children, especially older ones, this is counterproductive because they will need a break from learning. You know your child best, so work with what is most effective. Often after dinner is a good time. Establish a routine whereby you know what homework your child has and what day it is due to be handed it. Try not to set more than an hour at a time for homework until they are in their teens, unless your child particularly enjoys learning. Ensure you are always on hand to help with anything they do not understand, but try to refrain from doing it for them. Problem solving is an ability that will aid them in developing their independence. If they are really struggling, teach them to approach the task from another angle rather than head-on. Always praise your child for doing well when they complete a homework task or any other task. This will build their confidence and help them to recognize their self-worth. Whether a child is exceptional academically or below average is not the issue. The only thing they should concentrate on is that they approach their homework with a positive attitude and complete it to the best of their ability. Playtime. Any time that isn't assigned to fulfilling a particular need can become playtime. Through play, children develop social skills, motor skills, reasoning, imagination, and logic, and they develop a whole host of educational experience. As babies and toddlers, we see the benefit of toys, which both teach and stimulate the mind, but as the older the child gets, the less obvious the benefits become, yet they are still there. Other than for a safety aspect, allow the child to explore the toy, if possible do this with them. While individual toys may be designed for a particular type of play, there is no such thing as a toy that can be used for only one thing. A doll's tea set can be used for more than playing at tea parties. It could become an item in a toy shop with the child as the shopkeeper or customer. This aids social skills, mathematical ability, cognitive thought, improvisation, to name just a few benefits, and playing with another person encourages sharing of toys and a relaxed attitude towards accommodating other people's needs. A toy is a tool for expanding a child's imaginative range. Teach them to think outside the box by asking them how else they could play with the toy. Give them hints and allow their imagination to take you wherever it leads. If at any point you find yourself thinking that they are playing wrong, think of Einstein. Without a vivid imagination and a strong determination to explore it, he would never have discovered his theory of relativity. Maybe a more relevant point would be that we would not have cars, televisions, or even fridges without those inventions first being born from someone's imagination. Art is a fantastic way to help your children stretch their minds. A plastic sheet covered with glue, pots of paint and empty sweet wrappers and toilet roll tubes can give hours of fun to child and parent alike. There is no possible way for art to ever be wrong because it is an expression of something, so encourage, join in and then praise a job well done. Boundaries and discipline. Boundaries, or rules, are a fundamental principle in raising your children. By creating boundaries you are teaching your child to develop self-control. Without self-control, we are little more than wild and self-satisfying. We lack respect for others and do not understand compassion, sharing, empathy, or any form of restraint. We simply do and take whatever we want with no regard for the consequences beyond how it will affect us personally. It is the basis for holding down employment, understanding schooling, and interacting socially. While most parents understand the necessity for installing rules, we fail at enforcing them and restrict punishment. All parents want love and acceptance from their children, but in order to receive it you must first give it. Setting boundaries is not cruel and punishing wrongdoing is not unfair, despite how often your child will tell you it is. Unfortunately, society has put labels on so many things that parents are often unsure about what they should or shouldn't be doing. We set boundaries because we wish to teach our children how to function in adult life. How to have a healthy relationship with friends, family, and their girlfriend or boyfriend, how to maintain a job they can enjoy, or at least gain a level of satisfaction from, and how to understand right from wrong. It is not about control, but many parents become upset with the idea of seeing their child unhappy, so they fail to follow through with the rules they have set. What needs to be accepted is that rules are in place for the benefit of the child and that they allow a child a sense of security. They are there to create order out of chaos. Without order, a child can't learn control, and without control they can't learn self-respect or develop a conscience. By allowing a child to remain unpunished for bad behavior, you are teaching them that you don't truly care what they do. At a young age they just feel unsure of everything without recognizing why. As they get older they will begin to feel like the parent has little interest in anything they do, so they will push harder to gain that interest. Though they are not mature enough to realize it, what they are craving when acting out is the love that is shown through boundaries, the aspect of caring about the child that offers a security nothing else can give. Discipline should not be a negative experience. It is not about screaming at a child or beating them. It is not about mind games and torment, withholding food or locking them in a room. Quite simply, that is abuse. Discipline is about taking an active role in discouraging negative behaviors, not punishing a child because they are bad people. Perspective is the order of the day when it comes to setting your boundaries and punishments. If your upbringing has been quite harsh, it is understandable that you will shy away from treating your child in the same way. Other parents are afraid that their children will see them as cruel. But gentle and effective discipline is kinder to the child than a disregard for what they are doing. This is where perspective comes in. Tantrums, sulks and accusations of being the worst parent in the world are perfectly normal and should mean little. Rising to the bait will lead to a standoff between parent and child. When carrying out any form of discipline, you must remain outwardly calm, even if you are raging inside. By not reacting you are keeping the control with yourself rather than handing it to the child. What are effective forms of discipline? Before you can set a discipline, you must decide what rules you wish your child to follow. It is important when doing this that you accept your child is not actually bad, it is simply the behavior that is unacceptable. Always explain calmly to your child why a particular behavior is not going to be tolerated and what the punishment will be if they continue to do it. You can't expect them to understand right from wrong if they have not had it explained to them. Discuss rules with your child and ask them to participate in setting the boundaries. A child is less likely to ignore a rule they have had a hand in making than one that has been forced upon them. These rules may need reassessing as the child gets older and new ones introducing. Punishment should always be non-aggressive, so use things like timeouts, removal of favorite toys and restriction of treats and television. Any punishments must be strictly enforced, preferably without any show of frustration or negative emotion. If you find your child is regularly repeating the same transgression, despite punishment, make a reward chart with them and give them a goal to aim for. It is also vital that you remember that your child does not have a will made of steel. Many times a child will do something without too much thought because their wants will override their thought processes. So if you tempt them with something they shouldn't do or have, you will have only yourself to blame if they are unable to stop themselves from touching or taking it. Their restraint improves considerably with age. Positivity. Always approach warnings or discipline with a positive aspect. Instead of saying, "Do not hit your brother," instead try, "Do you think you would like it if someone did that to you?" This approach forces the child to contemplate the question and raises an awareness of the situation as opposed to a negative order with no reason being given. Lastly, always reward good behavior and praise all accomplishments. This creates a balance and the child will recognize the difference between what is good and what isn't much easier. It also helps to build a child's confidence in a positive way and negates the attention they hope to receive from behaving badly. Independence. Without independence, your child will never grow as a person in his or her own right. While it is natural to want to protect your child, you must allow them to make mistakes. It is a lot more beneficial to a child to know that they can be free to explore their own personality, and if they fall, their parents love them and are there to support them. Promote independence in your child from their earliest years and involve them in decisions. Ask them what story they would like at bedtime, what clothes they would like to wear that day, or give them the choice of 2 meals and ask which they would prefer. Help your child understand that his or her opinion is important to you and always react positively to their choices. If you give them a decision about something that is unimportant, such as the clothing example, they will feel valued and will be oblivious to the fact that what they choose to wear will not really be affecting anything. Find ways to give them some sense of responsibility. When shopping, tell them you would like 4 bananas and ask the child to help you by getting them. Even though you are stood right next to them, the child experiences a sense of achievement and feels they are important to you. Give them one job to do every day. It could be putting their laundry in the hamper before bed or tidying up the toys they have been playing with. If a child does well at something, even if it's just a game, tell them how clever they are for being able to do it and praise all the little things. This will encourage them to want to do it again. Always allow the child to do things for themselves. So long as it isn't dangerous, there is no reason for you to do something for them if they want to try themselves. An endless amount of patience may be needed, but by the time they hit their teens they will be reasonably self-sufficient and have the confidence in their own abilities to try new things. Childhood development. One of the best tools at your disposal when you are parenting a young child is play. All children love to play, and no matter what their personality, there is always something that will stimulate them. Never underestimate a child's willingness to stretch their imagination, and the key to unlocking it lies with the child. Use the things that interest them irrespective of what you might personally feel about it. Many parents prefer to use a toy of their own choice to play with, but if it holds little interest for the child, then their responses to anything you do with it will be restricted. With all play, you are able to teach life lessons. Use of manners, respect for others, what is and isn't acceptable behavior, and the consequences of bad behavior. Even work ethics and familial loyalty can be taught at a young age. Once you have a toy that has gained their interest, run with it and mold your play session around it. I am not suggesting you take a 4-year-old child and attempt to teach them why they should hold down a full-time job as an adult. It is their moral compass that you are focusing on with these play lessons. You are trying to build a foundation of thought processes that will stack up naturally to become a solid reference base that your child will refer to throughout his or her adult life. The most important factor in this process is that you, as the parent, remove your own ideas and opinions from what you are trying to teach them. This is about basic life lessons, not about what they should and shouldn't think. Focus only on the qualities you wish to impart to your child. An important and controversial issue in the role of children's play is that of gender. This needs to be removed before you start. So often, if a little boy picks up a doll to play with, the first reaction is, "That's a toy for girls. You shouldn't be playing with it." Why? When a child sees a doll, they are not wondering if it is gender appropriate for them to play with. They are thinking along the lines of, "That looks like a person and it's a girl just like Mummy." It is the grown-up who categorizes it and brings that thought into the child's mind. By doing this, you are teaching your child that boys and girls have opposing roles simply because they are different. This archaic view of gender is why people have struggled for acceptance in certain jobs for generations, and yet, we wouldn't complain if a male nurse treated us when we were sick, or that a female soldier is fighting for her country. Instead of focusing on the negative, as some may see it, look at it as an opportunity to teach your child about people in general. Dolls and stuffed animals are a great way to teach a child about boundaries, bullying, manners, respect, and sharing, etc. Example of learning play. Lesson equals bullying and consequences. You will need 3 dolls or teddies. 1 for disciplinarian, parent. 1 for the role of naughty teddy, parent. 1 for the role of good teddy, child. Ensure your scenario is age appropriate. Both toys play together for a short time. Then naughty bear pushes good teddy. Bring in third toy. Third teddy tells the naughty teddy that its behavior is unacceptable, gives a short explanation as to why, and sends the teddy for a timeout. Place the teddy bear out of the area of play, but keep it in the child's line of vision. Do not give any attention or make any reference to this teddy. Refocus your child's attention on play, maybe race the 2 toys you are playing with, anything to distract their attention in a fun way. After a couple of minutes, ask your child if they think the naughty teddy has learnt their lesson yet. If they reply with a positive response, send the child to ask Teddy if he has learnt his lesson. Naughty Teddy says sorry and they return to playing. This whole scenario will have taken no more than 10 minutes of play, but your child has learned some valuable life lessons about being kind to others. The consequences of negative actions, how to accept an apology without holding a grudge, and that if they are naughty they will be punished. The lesson sticks in the child's mind because it wasn't taught as a lesson or given as a lecture. It was done through play and the child did not recognize they were being taught anything. This approach can be applied to any lesson you wish to teach, and the earlier you start this process, the deeper the lesson will be ingrained in the child's mind. Remember that each lesson cannot be taught only once. It will need a minimum of 3 play sessions on each subject, but spread them out. Use different toys and scenarios so the child's interest is always focused. Above all, show your child they are loved, respected, and wanted. There is no substitute in life for a parent's love and cuddles. Teenagers today. Being a parent of a teenager is one of the most challenging aspects of parenting. It requires an infinite amount of patience and the ability to see things through your teen's eyes. Every teen believes that their parents have no understanding of what their life is like or of how hard it is. In today's world, teenagers have a notoriously bad reputation thanks to the media and tend to be prejudged and categorized as a whole. It is often the case that they place that negativity on their parents as well. In truth, there is little difference between teenagers now and teenagers of previous generations. The explosion of drug and alcohol abuse is not something new. And while access to these things is a lot easier than it was even 20 years ago, the choices placed before the teen are no different. It is down to the parent to educate the teenager and then trust they have the ability, along with enough self-confidence, to make the correct choices. Ultimately, it is the choice of the individual which road they take, not the parent. A new role is introduced to a parent's job with this age group, that of support and understanding on an unerring level. It would be a perfect life if we could guarantee our child wouldn't make mistakes, but it is highly unlikely they will escape their teenage years unscathed. By accepting this before they reach this milestone, you will find life much easier to cope with if things do go wrong. From teenage pregnancies to drug abuse, stealing or fighting, the ability to cope with, and help your child come through it, lies in accepting it as a possibility. Essentially, a teenager requires exactly the same from a parent as they did when they were young, but raging hormones mixed with a struggle for personal growth means that they will rarely admit it. Once we leave the teenage years behind, it is easy to forget just how difficult they can be. They are neither children nor adult but are somehow expected to fit into both categories at the same time, and the whole while they are trying to find who they are themselves. They strive for complete independence while still being in need of love and guidance from a parent. As the parent, you are somehow expected to understand this and know which mood they are in at any given time and react accordingly. Too strict and you become the parent from hell, whose only purpose in life is to make them miserable, but too laid back and you hate them and don't care what happens to them. Trying to stay somewhere in the middle is impossible because they don't understand what it is they want or need from you. The mood swings can range from a quiet sulk to a full-on tantrum with banging doors. Throwing things and lots of screaming, but 10 minutes later they can be snuggled up to you crying, and the entire time you can make no sense of what any of it was about. The only way to prevail is to be consistent. Keep a calm head and stick to your rules and boundaries. Sit with your teen and reevaluate what those should be and work out the punishments and rules. Keep a quiet dignity and try not to allow them to see they have rattled you. Regularly tell them and show them you love them and encourage family time so they can see you as someone to have fun with as well as being a parent. Keep the communication open and whenever possible. Ask about their day or things that are important to them and try to have some one-on-one time so they have an opening to discuss anything which may be bothering them without any pressure. It is during this stage that parents can sometimes become overbearing simply because they feel they are no longer important to their child. This is, of course, completely untrue. No matter how old your child is, they will always need you. But it is important to allow them their privacy. So much is changing in their lives, from how they look to how they think, and they need time to process it. If they don't want to talk to you, that is fine, so long as they are aware that you are there for them any time they do need to chat. The main thing to remember if they do approach you to talk, whether it is to complain about something or to confide in you, whatever the topic, you should listen more than talk. Teens need to feel they have a voice that is relevant. By dismissing their opinions or needs, you are crushing their independence. Find a way to guide them without dictating. If you can get them to find the solution to their issues by themselves, with the help of a few guided questions from you, then that will result in an even better outcome. But no matter how trivial something seems to you, if they are talking about it, then it is important to them. During the journey of self-discovery, a teen will often want to stand out from the crowd. Subjects such as tattoos, piercings, alternative clothing, or hair color can provoke a parent into a negative response. You will need to learn to pick your battles. A tattoo is an expensive thing to remove and will almost certainly leave some remnant of it behind. A piercing, on the other hand, while you may not like it, is not permanent. Body bars and rings can be removed, and in most cases the piercing will close up. Hair dyes and clothing are not for life either, so if they find they want to express themselves in a way you wouldn't choose, try to be understanding and recognize that compromise is the better option. An accepting parent usually discovers that the thrill will quickly go out of something, while a stubborn parent will push the teen's particular phase of the moment to a deeper level. Hints and tips. The most valuable thing you can give your child is your unconditional love. Always praise your children, not just for the big things such as exam results. They will come to expect that and take it for granted if they do well. Praising them for the little things is what makes an impact. Think back to when they were babies and began to copy you. The first time they clapped their hands or recognized facial features by pointing to their eyes or nose on request. How much fuss did you make? I'm guessing quite a lot, and your baby responded by repeatedly doing the thing you got excited about. As children get older, we naturally take a step back with this praise. The milestones aren't as obvious, and we take their behavior for granted on a daily basis. No matter how old your children are, they will still need that acknowledgement that you are proud of them. A display of manners from a young child may be something you simply expect, and so it becomes a normal event and doesn't require comment. This means the child becomes complacent with their attitude to others. A casual comment such as, "By the way, I was really proud of you today. You were very polite with that shopkeeper when they were being rude to customers," can have a huge effect on a child of any age, but especially as they get older and the need for theatrics has diminished. There has been no fuss, and the praise has been slipped into a conversation very casually, so the child will take it on board. They will enjoy the emotional response it has given them and aim to get that feeling again. A simple word or a hug can reassure them and build their confidence. Be honest with your child about how you feel. Children need to see parents as a person and not just an authority figure that dictates rules and never gets things wrong. As parents, we seem to have an insatiable need to hide our mistakes from our children, but we expect them to acknowledge theirs. Parenting requires balance, and if you can't say you are wrong, then how can they? After all, they learn from your behavior and actions. By showing that you can be vulnerable, you are teaching them that it is okay to make a mistake, learn from it and move forward. Nobody is perfect. Take control of your role as a parent. You have rules that must be adhered to, so always follow through with any discipline relating to a broken rule. The reason we make them is to protect our children, so when you hesitate to carry out a punishment, you are handing control to your child. This strength needs to be applied to any decisions you make regarding your child. As they get older, this can become quite stressful. They are often irrational and use emotional blackmail to change your mind. Stay firm, keep calm and refuse to rise to the bait. If the situation begins to escalate, detach yourself and walk away. Tell them that if they speak to you with respect, you will listen and answer them, but while they continue shouting, you will be ignoring them. Every time you answer their angry protests, you are giving fuel to the argument. They may get louder for a while to try to provoke a response, but it rarely takes long for them to calm down, and they will either accept your decision or attempt a rational conversation. All children go through phases of behavior, but if something is particularly worrying, a parent often jumps in feet first to deal with it. Let the phase run its course while keeping a close eye on the situation. Quite often the problem behavior does not last very long, even though it does not feel that way for the parent. While keeping your priority on helping them and keeping them safe. Try not to worry too much at the start. If you are stressed, this will spill over and affect your reactions when parenting. This puts more emphasis on the issue you are stressing over. Your child may be only passing through this phase and need guidance, but by focusing on it you can strengthen the child's awareness of it, and it can easily turn from phase to habit. Even a young child has the mental capability to understand about feelings and behavior if you explain it and allow them to talk about it. Word this appropriately for the child's age and relate what you are telling them to something they can understand, but always talk to them and explain things in a relaxed way. When you are having a conversation with an older child, especially when you are discussing their behavior, never lecture them. They will tune out almost instantly. Keep these conversations short and to the point. If they want to discuss anything in greater detail, they will take the lead with the subject as it is discussed. Several short conversations about a particular topic will penetrate much deeper than a long lecture where they simply agree, so you will stop talking. During conversations, it is more important that you listen to what your children is saying. Don't just hear the words that are being said. Actively listen to them. Ask them their opinions and give them a chance to talk. Conclusion. Thank you again for downloading this book. I hope this book was able to help you to understand about your role as a parent and has given you some valuable advice that you can utilize while you are raising your children. The next step upon successful completion of this book is to put the knowledge and insights that you have taken from it into practice. Enjoy your role as a parent and help your child become the person they want to be.